Hello everybody! Today we are going to be making this beautiful macrame necklace. You can use any crystal, but I am using a rose quartz heart crystal. My favorite part about this necklace, it is completely adjustable. Adjust it to any length that suits you. Also, this only takes about 45 minutes to make from start to finish, so let's go ahead and get started. For this project, you can use any kind of string, but I use 1mm hemp string. You need a crystal, and you need some beads, and of course, you cannot forget your scissors. You are going to have to measure out 4 equal pieces of string. I usually do it the double length of my arms. The bigger the crystal, the more string that you need to use. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that these ends match up and you find the middle. We want the string to be as even as possible. So you're going to go to the end and find the middle. And then we're going to grab a second piece of string and feed it through the middle of that. And we're going to find the double ends, match those up, and make sure that our string is even. After you're done, it should look something like this, little intertwined. Now what we're going to do next is we are going to measure out where we want our starting point to be. We have to make a base so it can hold our crystal. I do it about half the length of the first mark of my pointer finger. And we're just going to make sure that we tug that really, really tight. No matter how tight you think string is, it can definitely go tighter. And we're just going to make sure this side is even matched up with the other side. And when I pull it through, I like to hold my fingers together so I can measure where I'd like it before I pull it through. And once again, we're going to make sure that's really good and tight. And next, we are going to go ahead and feed our third string through. And what you want to do is you want to bring the two ends together and you want to create a hole that the third string can easily pass by. And we are going to do what we did before. We want the string to be as evenly as possible. So after we feed this through, we want to pull the ends together. So go ahead, make sure that's super even. Go ahead, measure off where you want your knot to go and tie your knot. Here you'll see me measure with my fingers again before I pull it through. And when I release, it's so I can see exactly where it's going. And to make it super tight, I pull each string individually and then together. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I like my stuff to be a little even, so if it's a little off, it's not a big deal. So we have 3 even pieces. We're going to create another hole and feed our 4th piece of string through. Making sure that it is even, we are connecting the ends together and bringing it towards the middle. And here we are once again, measuring off our last knot to create our base for the crystal. Making sure to pull it super duper tight. All right, and now we have our base. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to let it kind of naturally fall into its personal shape. That way we can get a feel for how we want it to connect to the next pieces. And the way you do that is you're going to flip the sides over so they match. You don't want it to be twisted, you want to make sure it's straight. And the way you measure it depends on the crystal. I'm going to go ahead and make a semi-big loop because my crystal is a little wide at the bottom. If you have a smaller crystal, make sure you make it tighter. And here I go again, pulling each string individually, making sure it's good and tight, and then pulling it together. You don't have to do this, I just think it's a lot more useful. You can also have the crystal inside of this while you're doing it, but I find it a lot easier to adjust it when the crystal's not in it and I don't have the crystal flying around. So what you want to do is all the pieces should match up. And by the end, you should have 4 double pieces together. For your last two final pieces, it should be individuals. Everything else should be knotted up together. That's how you know this is your final one before you make the next rounds. So go ahead, pull those tight together. And like I said before, when you finish, you should have 4 double knots together. There should be no single string left. And go ahead and pull them super tight. All right, we got the first top to our base done. So I'm gonna put the crystal in there so I can measure just how far or big I want my pieces to be really. So there's our base. Hold on, let me fumble for a second. Just to get an idea of where I kind of want my edges to be and where I want my knots to go. And I like mine a little big. That way when I switch crystals out, it doesn't have to be the exact same size. So I measure with my heart, not the crystal. All right, it's time to start the next row. So go ahead, grab all your pieces, make sure they are side by side, measure, tie them off, and make sure they're tight. And we're gonna do this until you reach the width and length that you think is appropriate for your personal crystal. And here you're gonna see me measure the crystal again. I think I'm getting close to the end, so I wanna make sure that it's like perfect. Gotta pull the little sides over, measure it out, and see just where I want the little knots to go for the end. And to make sure it's where I like it, I'm going to try and leave the crystal in here so I can tie off the final knots. All right, I'm finally near the end where I want to knot off the 4 corners. So I'm just readjusting my crystal into the netting so I can get it sitting exactly where I want it to before I knot off the ends. And just like before, you should have 4 strands of double knots. And what you're going to do is you're connect 2 of those strands to each other and make a knot together. That is what is going to hold your crystal in place, and that is the section we're going to put our bead on. So once you get it sitting right where you want the crystal, you're going to gather 2 of the ends together. So you're going to have 4 pieces of string, and you are going to tie those together in a knot. And once again, here you will see me pull each string individually to tighten this knot. I want to make sure the knot is small enough that I can fit both knots through the bead. So let's go ahead, make sure we measure the second one roughly the same length as the first, and then we will move on to threading our beads. All right, now that our crystal is adjusted, it is time to thread our hemp cord. This can get a little tricky. Sometimes the beads don't want to work right and the thread wants to come undone. So if you're like me, you might want to keep a toothpick handy just to make sure you can push it through. It's super easy. All you have to do, you can either wrap it around or you can kind of put it into this little loop, or you can tie it and just push your bead and your cord on through. Now the first one's through, we just got to get the last 3. And once those are done, you're going to push it down in between the knots. All right, that last bead is through, so pull your string together and go ahead and push it over that notch. It's a little tough, but it has to be. And look, it just perfectly slides. All right, after the first side's done, the second side is a little trickier to push the string through. So definitely make sure you have a toothpick or something small to help you push it through. And here's that little trick I was telling you guys about. You fold the string up a little bit and you just kind of push it on through. Just make sure you don't knot yourself up. All right, remember how I said this was gonna be a little tricky? I had to do some of this off camera just because I had to pull it really hard. I like to do the bigger side first. That way the smaller side pulls through so much easier. It's a little tough to get it over these knots, but we're gonna get it done. All right, here's the bead on both the notches, and I just have to adjust my crystal real quick. And there, it just slides up and down. Super easy, super adjustable. That way you can lift it up over the knots when you want to change your crystals out. Okay, so for the next part, I recommend something your crystal can sit in where it will hold and not move, or putting it on top of something. We're going to separate the chunks of string. So each section should have 4 pieces of string, and we are going to start to braid it. I don't know if anybody braids the way that I do when I learned how to do this, but when you pull the string apart, there's going to be 2 on the outside that fall naturally and 2 that just fall naturally on the inside. And just like a normal braid, you want to take your 2 outside pieces and bring them towards the middle. So pull them over the middle, pull it over into the middle, and then you want to cross both of those. And then you're just going to repeat that next step. So cross over into the middle, over into the middle, and then you cross the 2 middle pieces. And if you wanted this to go faster, I found a really easy way. You cross 1 and then cross 2. It just double crosses, and you will always end up crossed, just like you would if you just did individual cross and cross 2. It is the same pattern, it just honestly makes it go just a little bit faster. And you want to make sure that you hold the pieces so you can remember what goes where. You want it to stay flat. So cross the outside into the middle and cross the outside over both. And you just repeat that process until it's done. All right, I'm gonna slow it down for you guys again. We are going to cross it from the outside into the middle. So take your right outside string, cross it into the middle, and then take your left outside string and cross that over both. Okay, and there's that notch again. So cross from the outside to the middle, and then outside to the middle, and there it is again. And you just repeat this process until you reach your desired length. All right, as we get close to the end, I like to braid over just a little bit past where I would like my final knot to be. That way the knot is also braided, so the braid does not come undone. Just an extra precaution I like to take. Also, don't do what I just did. Make sure you thread your bead before you tie your knot. It can be a little bit easier to get your bead on. I still got mine on, but for the next part, I threaded my bead before I tied my knot. Now all you have to do is braid the other side and match it to your final knot, and there you have your beautiful necklace.